Today is apparently National Homebrew Day, so I thought I would firstly make a brew and secondly try and film what I'm doing and put together some sort of video that shows how I make my beer using the brew in the bag method in a buffalo boiler and a no-chill cube. Here goes. Oh, and I should point out that the plan today is to make the Cascade single hop ale from this book, which is affectionately known in the homebrew community as the Bible. Right, the original recipe from the book says to use 4,700 grams of pale malt and 235 grams of Carapils malt, and then like a whole load of Cascade hops, which is what you'd expect in a single hop ale. However, that's the recipe for traditional all grain brewing method, and when you are using the brew in a bag method you have to alter it slightly, usually increase the amounts because I think it's to do with the efficiency. Isn't quite as good with the brew in a bag, so increase the grain bill to achieve the final gravity that we're hoping for. This piece of software, the BIAB, makes those adjustments for you. So I have put my original grain bill here on the left hand side, and it tells me what I need to do to achieve the same results with the brew in a bag method. So rather than 4,700 grams of pale malt, I'll use 5,240, and I will use 262 grams of Carapils rather than 235. And again, with the hop additions down here, where have they gone? There. I use more hops, more grams of hops for each addition to hopefully achieve the same level of bitterness and aroma that you would get from the original recipe if you were doing an traditional all grain brew. I do need to point out that I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing really. I'm definitely not an expert and I am very much a beginner. So anybody watching this, I don't know why they would be, but anybody watching this who is rather experienced in all grain brewing or brew in a bag brewing or just experienced in general in this sort of thing will probably be cringing at the way I do this. But hey, it's a learning process. So for insulating my boiler, I have some, I think it was called Super Quilt. I used it for insulating the conservatory roof at my last house. It was just some stuff I had left over. So what I tend to do is just stick it round the boiler like so. And clip it together. Pretty simple really. And it does the job. So boiler's insulated, 30 litres of water is in, the brew in a bag is in, and the boiler is now starting its very long and arduous process of heating this up to around about 65 degrees. I found in the past that for my setup about 35 litres of water in total does the job. Gets me a full no chill cube and plenty to make sure I get my sort of 23 litre batch in the fermenter. However, I've only put 30 litres of water in here for the mash, and then keep 5 litres separate, and I will add that once I've pulled the bag, just because the first time that I used this and I put the full 35 litres in, it was a bit too full once the bag went in and all the grain went in, and it was spilling over the edges. So that's why I've done that, and it doesn't seem to have impacted on the quality of the beer that I've made, not noticeably anyway. I don't even know if there's any reason why it would negatively impact it, to be honest. I'm sure someone will tell me if there is. And so what I'm going to do in the meantime, while that is warming up, heating up, whatever, I'm going to go and weigh out all of my grain and get that ready for doughing in what will probably be about 45 minutes, I think it normally takes to get up to the right temperature. So it was a bit of a wait. Right, okay, so the grain is measured out, carapils in here, and the don't even know if you can see that from there. So carapils in here and the pale malt in there, and we'll just do a quick temperature check, see where we are up to, how far away we are from being able to get that grain in here. (56.6), less than 10 degrees to go, so it shouldn't be too long before we can mash in. I'm really hoping, it was sunny when I started this and now it's not. Slightly concerned that it was a bad idea to choose outside as the brew spot today. Okay, so we are now at so we've just about 65, 64.7, so I'm going to start putting in some of my grain. Give it a good stir. I tend to do a bit at a time. Start it just before it gets to 65, then I'll cut the temperature on the boiler. Okay. Another quick check. Yeah, just hitting the 65 there. I don't want to cut it just yet until the last time I did that, I cut it dead on 65, and by the time I put all the grain in, I'd lost a couple of degrees. So I'm going to keep it going a bit longer while I'm mashing in, doughing in, whatever you call it, putting the grain in. Just put this over there. like a witch's cauldron. What you want to do is make sure you get rid of any dough balls like that. And make sure you get rid of these bad boys, those dough balls. So really mixing it all up, getting rid of them in the process. There we go, there's one there. Push it, crush it against the side, break it up. Okay, so just over 65, almost at 66 now, so I'm going to cut the power, he says. There. Give it a good stir. So now we've got our mash, stick the lid on. I'm going to leave it for 90 minutes. I'll check on it every 25-30 minutes and give it a good stir and make sure the temperature is stable. Do you even brew if you don't stick a sleeping bag on top of your boiler or mash tun? My sleepover bag? What do you think I'm doing with it? Okay, so just on the first check, we are hitting the numbers, possibly a little bit too high actually. So I've misjudged that one. It's not too bad, we're at around about 66. So I think that's okay, I don't really know, to be honest. I'm sure it'll be fine. So I'm just going to give it a quick stir and mix up. Stick the lid back on, check again in half an hour. Okay, second check, or stir. Smells amazing. Malty goodness. Pretty happy with that. So that's been in here an hour and we've lost about 1 degree. I think that's pretty good. It's gotten quite chilly. Right, so the next thing to do once the mash is finished will be to pull the grain bag out, obviously with all the grain inside. In an ideal world, you'd have some sort of fancy pulley system or hook or something that you could use to hang the bag on once you've pulled it out. I don't have one of those, so what I use is one of these from a grill pan. Balance this on top of the boiler, pull the bag out, slide this underneath, balance the bag on top, hold and very gently squeeze to make sure I get all the fermentable sugars out. It's not the best way of doing it, but it's worked so far. So shortly as this is approaching its end, the end of the mash, sorry. So shortly I will be doing that, and yeah, don't laugh. Right, like I said, this is an extremely rudimentary way of doing this, and it's probably absolutely laughable, but we'll give it a go. I'm going to give it one more stir actually before lifting it. It smells like Horlicks. That's my additional 5 litres of water. I've made it 6 litres because what I'm going to do is put an extra litre in, bring it up to the boil, and then draw a litre off into my conical flask for my yeast starter. I made a bit of a mess of that, but got there eventually. Oh, Anna needs her bike. I'll be back in a minute. They now have their bikes. Anyway, that's besides the point. Right, the grain bag has been pulled and all the spent grain is in there. And we have our wort in the boiler, and I have cranked the temperature, well, turned it back on, and we will bring this up to the boil. Just do a quick check of current temp. So we are at around 70. So it's got a bit of a way to go before it gets to the boil. As I said before, I put the additional 5 litres in, and I also added another litre, so I put 6 litres extra in. The extra litre is so that when this reaches the boil and before I make any hop additions, I'm going to draw off that litre into my conical flask and then use the wort that's in there for my yeast starter, rather than make one from dry malt extract. So let's leave this for however long it takes to get towards the boil. And in the meantime, I'm going to go and weigh out my hops. I've got my Cascade hop pellets here from the Hazy Days Brewery. I'm going to weigh these out now. Never used hop pellets before, I've only ever used flowers, so don't know if it'll make any difference. They smell absolutely amazing. Now, this next part is the most important part of the brew day, and I won't have anybody say otherwise. What you need to do now, while the water is coming up to boil, is open your fridge and grab a nice cold beer, preferably a home brew. So this one was one that I brewed 4 weeks ago today. I'm going to crack it open. Smells good. Carefully pour. And now my child is crying. No, she's not crying. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. It's clearing up. It's not the clearest one I've ever made, but it's clearing up. And we'll drink it. She's going to cry again now. Third attempt. Yes, this was made with pale malt carapils and Munich malt in the grain bill, Amarillo and Galaxy hops in the boil, and then I dry hopped it with Galaxy and YT hops, and it's very smooth, very drinkable, and it's got a real undertone of vanilla, and I don't know why, because it shouldn't do, but it's nice. So because of the very slight vanilla-y taste, I have called this one Isolation Baby. It's terrible. I'm going to slightly alter the hop additions because I'm using the no chill cube. I've been told that using a no chill cube is similar to adding 20 minutes onto the length of time that the hops are in. So I'm gonna not put my bittering hops, the first hop additions, in at the start of the boil. I'm gonna wait 20 minutes and then put them in. I'm gonna put one of these in with 15 minutes to go, this one in with 5 minutes to go, and then in the normal recipe you're supposed to put in another 63 grams of Cascade once the boil's finished, or when you whirlpool. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to dry hop with those ones instead. So we're pretty much at boiling point. So I'm going to draw off a litre of the wort into this bad boy so that I can use it for my yeast starter. A little bit more. Okay. And I'm going to stick that inside and let that just cool to room temperature, and then I'll chuck in the yeast and we'll have a starter, hopefully. If my yeast is still okay, we'll have a starter. And we've definitely got some boil action going on. So I'm going to set my timer. The boil is going to last for 90 minutes as well, same as the mash. So I'm going to set my timer and I'm going to put my first hop additions in 20 minutes time. Totally forgot to take a hydrometer reading after I'd done the mash, but I have managed to grab one for just as we hit the boil. So once that's cooled down, I'll pop the hydrometer in and at least we'll get some sort of idea of maybe where we're going to end up in terms of the important thing, alcohol volume. Okay, so 20 minutes in. First hop additions, 50-ish grams of Cascade. Something a wise homebrew sage once told me was that if you're struggling with the rock to get a really decent rolling boil, as I do with my Buffalo, a good way to improve it is to float a cake tin in the top, on top of it. Oops, yeah, knocked my camera over. On the top. I don't have a cake tin, but I do have two dishes like this. They're normally used to serve Indian food. So I'm going to stick these in the top. It has worked pretty well for me before, it just has increased how vigorous the boil is. So I'm going to stick those in the top, like so. Looks a bit weird, but it does help. Give it about 5 minutes and the boil will definitely be on the more vigorous side. The only problem is you have to keep an eye on the dishes because they tend to fill up as the boil increases. The dishes fill up with the wort, and if they get too full, they sink. And if they sink, they hit the element at the bottom, and then that activates the cutout, and then there's a whole host of issues to deal with if the boiler cuts out. So you have to kind of keep an eye on them and keep tipping them out when they start to look a little bit too full. Because I have had it before when two of them, I think, I left the room for about 10 minutes and two of them sunk, and when I came back the boiler had stopped. It was not a good night. The hydrometer reading for the water that I took out just as we got into the boil. It's not going to focus. Well, anyway, it's reading at 1.052, which is higher than I expected, and that is not a problem. Time for the 15-minute editions. See those, make sure they don't sink. And again. There we go. Okay, time for the final hop additions. Last 5 minutes of the boil. Chuck them in. And I'm also putting in a teaspoon of Irish moss to, I think you use it to encourage a lot of the what do you call it, break material to sink to the bottom. We have reached the end of the boil. 90 minutes is up, so off we go. Power cup. Take out my Indian serving dishes. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to whirlpool in here, get it all spinning around. Just going to do this for a couple of minutes. So, got that spinning. It's a pretty pathetic whirlpool, really. But anyway, whatever. I'm going to stick the lid on. And I'm going to leave it for 10 minutes. And when I come back, we're going to transfer it into the no-chill cube, and the brew day is almost done. So it's been 10 minutes since whirlpooled, well, a little bit longer than 10 minutes. Oh, hi Alf. What are you doing there? So I've attached my tube, silicone tube, to my tap. This is my no-chill cube. Tube into here. Obviously, pretty self-explanatory. Okay, and it definitely looks like a lot of the brake material has started to sink. It was all floating up at the top before, it's not there now. Yeah, so I'm going to turn the tap and hopefully the wort is going to flow from here into here. So once this is full, or as full as it gets, then I will obviously put the lid on and then just squeeze out as much air as I can, and make sure that that I sort of turn it upside down and on its side and everything, to make sure that every surface on the inside of this cube is touched by the boiling hot, or just not quite boiling hot wort, because then it'll sterilise everything inside here. It's been sterilised it anyway with chemicals, but just in case there's anything lingering, the 90-something degree wort should kill off any sort of little bugs or anything that's in there. So, here, lid on. And then I'm just going to roll it that way for a few seconds. That way. Back down this way. And upright. Just to make sure that everything in there is completely sterile. Because that stuff in there is blimmin' hot, as my insides of my legs can attest to. So it'll kill off anything. And now take this inside, leave it to cool to room temperature, and this will stay nice and sterile in there, ready for whenever my yeast starter is viable. So all I need to do is get the yeast starter going this evening. Once the wort that I took off earlier is at the right temperature, chuck the yeast in, get that started. Once it's started and it's ready to pitch into here, decant this into a fermenter, yeast on top, and away we go. I'm really tired.